Hi, I'm Phyllis Lang, and welcome to Nightwear. Today's webinar deals with a question submitted by Tim about the roles of sessions, projects, and observations. Tim sent this question to me about 2 years ago, and I'm sorry for the long delay in responding with a webinar. I had a shoulder injury in late 2014, and I spent most of 2015 rehabilitating it. But it's all well now, so I'm ready to get back to business with the webinars. So anyway, Tim wanted to know exactly how to use observing projects. So the first thing I need to describe to you is the role of a project. So a project can be viewed by using the Observing Project Manager. You can find that in the Observing log here, and you can also find it on this toolbar with this tool button. At any rate, an observing project is just a container for observations. As such, you can use observations without observing projects at all. These are your observations. They're shown on the right side of the Project Manager window. The left side shows the projects that are currently defined in your database. A project can hold an observation, but an observation does not have to belong to a project. Furthermore, an observation can belong to more than one project. So, you can do something like observe Caldwell 10, and you can place it in a couple of different observing projects. Maybe you're working on awards, and each of the awards requires an observation of, let's say, Caldwell 10. So when you're finished with the project, you can delete the project, but the observation of Caldwell 10 is not deleted from your database. So again, observing projects are just temporary containers that you should use for organizational purposes. Okay, so how do we create a new project? Well, quite simple. You can either click this tool button, or you can go to the File menu, New Project. That creates a new project. We'll just accept that name rather than enter a different one. I can drag observations to that project from the right to the left, and it resorted by name. Perhaps I want to put a second one in there. Now I can expand the new project, and I can see both of those observations in there. Now, to make this the favorite project in the system, and I'll explain that in a moment, but to make it the favorite, you click Favorite. There can be only one favorite in the system at a time, and to select a different one, you just click the project in the project pane and click Favorite. You can also do it through a context menu. I clicked, right-clicked, and then I can make this the favorite. Now, again, I can delete a project, and the observations that it contains are not deleted too. So I can delete, and as you can see, those observations did not get deleted from the database. Now, the next thing would be to add observations to a project. So you can do that here in the Observing Project Manager, but I wouldn't normally do it that way. You can do it that way. You would click the New Observation button and fill everything out. Now, in this particular view, you can't direct the observation to a single project the way you can elsewhere in the system. And that's because of the way the data is combined in the database. But if you were to enter your new observations in the Observation Project Manager, then they would appear here, and you can always drag them over to the project to which you want them to belong. One last thing, if you are creating your observations using the Observing Project Manager, there's one other technique that makes this a lot easier. Sometimes I will record a number of observations the day after I do the observing, and I take my observing notes with a little digital voice recorder. And so I will enter the observations using the Project Manager. I'll enter all the observations and then I'll select all of them that I want to direct to a project. And I'm using Select and then Shift Select to grab several observations, and you can take them all and put them into a project. So you definitely can do it that way if you prefer. So another way to record your observations and put them in a project would be to select the observation browser, and that comes up, and you'll notice here that Caldwell's is the favorite observing project at this point, and you can also see that here. Now the right pane is grayed out because this is the contents of this particular observation. It is not open for editing. So if I wanted to create a new observation, I could click New, and I have a new blank observation. Now, notice the contents of the Detail tab. The instrument, eyepiece, and so forth are filled using data from your last observation entry. That sort of speeds up the flow. We're also using the last session that was edited. And if I want to create a new session, I can do so here. Now, Tim, as far as sessions are concerned, a session really gathers together the location and time that you observed. So you can choose a location. These are all coming from the Location Manager. And you can select a date and a time if you wish. Now, for this particular entry, I have a single date and time. That essentially tells the system that you began to observe on this date and at this time, and we shouldn't concern ourselves with the time of other observations in this session. Now, if you actually want to delineate the times of the session, then you should set a begin and an end time, and the system will be sure that any observations you enter fall between the begin and end time for the session. And you can add a descriptive message about the session. So a session, again, is just your time and place. So if we were to continue on and select an object and so forth, we would enter our notes here. Notice Add to Favorite Observing Project. As I enter observations using the observation browser, I can either have them automatically added to the Caldwell's project since it is the current favorite, or not. Generally, when I enter my observations this way, I use the default and I add my observations to the favorite project. Now, the other way to add your observations is to open an observing plan or even a search report. It's more common with an observing plan. Here is my Caldwell plan. If you see the screen far over here to the right, the Details pane, I have observations. Now, I can add a new observation of the selected object, open the detailed view of that observation, or edit it. When you add an observation using the observation editor, it will automatically be attached to your favorite project if you have one selected. The last kind of thing that I really want to bring to your attention, I'll close this observing plan. The most important thing I think I can remind people of is to back up their user data, including their observing log. So you should become familiar with File, Backup, and here you can select the items to be included in your backup. If you choose observations, then a number of these other items are included if they're referenced within an observation. So if you want to be quite safe, you can select all, or perhaps you would prefer to only save your observations into a backup set. I will be covering backup and restore in the next webinar, so I will delve into that further at that time. But please don't forget to back up your observations. That's all for this webinar, and thank you for watching. I'll open it up for questions.